We've been talking a lot about cornerbacks. Today I want to talk about the proverbial unicorn, the outlier, the exception to the rule. I'm talking about Asante Samuel. Let's talk for a few seconds and learn a little bit about this entire cornerback discussion. What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, Division Rivals? This is Stephen Hyder, Gate City Sports Channel. Sports Channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. Hey, what's good, guys? If you're new to the channel, man, we are closing in on 6,000 subscribers. As I'm recording this, we're at 5,900, like 78, 79-ish, guys. So, I mean, we're almost there, guys. I would love to get you guys to be part of the community and help me get to that 6,000 subscriber count. Just need you to subscribe to do that if you enjoyed today's content. To my OG subscribers, I can ask you guys to just keep hitting the like button. Greatly appreciate it, guys. All right, y'all, today's topic. So, I did a lot where I broke down the, L drills of guys, like the three-cone drills called the L drill, guys. The short shuttle, which commonly referred to as the 20-yard shuttle, guys. We talked about the 40-yard split and why you never trust a full 40 time and why you need to know basically the splits, the 10-yard split, the 20-yard split, and how that factors, right? I had mentioned some other guys that I thought were kind of outliers, right? Where we talked about arm reach. And if you have under 30-inch arm reach, it's really difficult to translate to the outside as an outside cornerback. And I brought up a few names like Darrell Green, right? We talked about Mark McMillan. We talked about some of these older players that played back when it was a little bit more of the two-back, 21 personnel, dominant personnel grouping frequency across the league. Well, today I want to talk about a guy that kind of brushed up on the change. It really started to shift and change in the mid-2000s, but certainly following 2012 was the drastic change into more of the 11-man personnel, 3 wide receiver sets, and a more prominent role for guys that could play nickel corner on very high volume of snaps, if you will. So today's discussion, I want to talk about Asante Samuel. Why? He was an outside cornerback that was under 6 feet. I'm going to say he's 5'10", but truth be told, most guys would say he's 5'11". Like, he measured like 5.10.9, something like that, guys. It's something ridiculous. He's basically 5'11". 185 pounds. Here's the golden ticket, though, guys. Arm reach. 29.5-inch arms. And we all know that Asante Samuel could be criticized for his run defense. Certainly. But the one thing I will never take away from Asante Samuel is you put that man in zone. You let him read the pattern recognized. You let him read the route concepts. And you let him read the quarterback. He was special. There's only a few guys in the league who have ever played the ball in the air as well as Asante Samuel. That's what I want to get into is, like, why was he the exception to the rule? We've talked all this week about all these numbers. Well, let's talk about Asante Samuel's numbers, and let's talk about what made him that exception. So, start with 40-yard dash. His overall combine grading was really bad. He had a D grading. I think he had like a 50 out of 100 grading from the combine. Was not very good. Came under on quite a few of the important stats here. To begin with, he did inch into being a 4.55 40 or less. He ran a 4.52. But generally speaking, most of us would say, like, oh, 4.52 is not, that's not a great time. But like I told you before, don't trust the full 40 time guys, know the splits. The splits are important to know. To begin with, I told you, I look for in the 10-yard split a 1.55 marker or below. Wouldn't you know that Asante Samuel had exactly a 1.55 10-yard split on the 40. Here's where things get interesting, though. You guys remember what I told you about Steven Nelson and his 20-yard split time? And I told you I get a little concerned when I see numbers above 2.6, especially if I got to have a guy manned up. He better be able to get his hands on him and disrupt a guy. Steven Nelson had a 2.63 20-yard split. Asante Samuel had a 2.66 20-yard split. That's not good. That is very concerning, and that would probably tell you that he's destined or was destined, obviously that destiny's been fulfilled, to play more in a zone-dominant scheme. I'm not saying that Asante Samuel could never play man up on a guy, could never play press, any of that. I'm just saying you would want to limit those snaps, right? I mean, he's better off playing off coverage and being able to read and diagnose plays. This is what I'll come to in terms of this. To begin with, golden rule number 1 here, guys, as we talk about this in the offseason, going into the season, and we look back on these players, understand one important fact. This is a snapshot in time, okay? This is what they put up at the combine or their pro day. Truth be told, it's not like their story ends there. Guys can do things to become, a little bit better with lateral movements, a little bit better with vertical movements, gain and build a little bit more explosion, right? Sure, they've done a lot between the time they were in high school and college to get into those college programs. Those college programs put you through a real strength and conditioning program. It changes your physique. It changes your testing, no doubt about it. The NFL is still a next level up, man. We've seen the modern advancements at the NFL level when it comes to sports science. So, it's a snapshot. We've got to keep that in mind that, yes, we're reporting the numbers. We know the data behind the numbers in these players. But these are snapshots when we talk about athletic testing. Point number 2 to talk about Asante Samuel, and this is where I think it gets interesting. When you looked at his combine measurements, he had a 29.5-inch arm reach. I don't know his wingspan, guys. I'm going to guess that it probably wasn't the greatest wingspan judging by the arm reach. There are a few dudes who have come into the league that have had smaller arms and have translated outside. We talked about the historic dudes like Mark McMillan, and we talked about, Darryl Green. We talked about dudes like that, right? With that said, this is the first time I think we know verifiably by data. We were making educated guesses when it came to Darryl Green based upon height and Mark McMillan. We also talked about the nuance of those guys playing in predominantly 21 personnel. The offenses were in 21 personnel, which meant that defenses were mostly in base 43 or 34 packages. So, you're not playing a lot of nickel, which means if you're a starting corner, it's likely on the outside. There's not a lot of sub-packages on defense being run during that time frame. Asante Samuel can make some of the same arguments, right? That, yes, teams started to spread you out more, but we hadn't reached the apex of where it is today. That really started happening around the 2011-2012 season into where we're at now, was like the expansion upon 3 wide receiver sets, 11-man personnel, if you will. 29.5-inch arms, he's the first guy that I can point to and I can say, this guy did it, and this guy did it on the outside. There's big discussions coming out of this draft. I can't remember the young man's name, but the young man from Washington who played outside, who was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. Young man who has very good ability to diagnose and pattern recognize. He can pick up on route combinations, and he understands how to play those route combinations. But he's not tall, and he doesn't have tremendous arm reach. I'm not calling him Asante Samuel. I'm just saying he's the next kind of example of this if it could happen, right? We tried our experiment with Avonte Maddox, a guy that has exceptional movement skills. But it didn't seem to work its way out on the outside for him, and he's a better athlete, to be fair, compared to Asante Samuel, but it didn't work outside. Could have been more so based upon the scheme and the system, more so than his actual ability to play outside, but it was definitely a failure with Avonte Maddox on the outside, underneath Jim Schwartz. He's the example, guys. He's one of those guys that's kind of the exception to the rule, right? He's the unicorn. He's that player. He's that guy. The last thing I'm going to talk about is we brought up this combine grade. I want to go a little deeper than just the 40 times, okay? He put up a 6.94 3-cone. The standard measurement you look for a 3-cone in a defensive back, guys, even receivers, really 7 seconds or less. That's normally when you're in the upper tier of corners. That's where you want to be in terms of the testing. It wasn't drastically under 7 at 6.94, but it's a respectable time. It's a good time. He met that prerequisite, that requirement there. That was the check mark in the favor for him in terms of the athletic testing. On the 20-yard shuttle, you really want to be what they call basically the short shuttle. On that 20-yard shuttle, you want to be 4 seconds or less. He ran at 4.09. That's a negative mark, right? That would lead you to believe that maybe his ability to move laterally is not the greatest in the world. Vertical jump, it's a little touch and go, guys. 36 inches is technically what the scouting world looks for in terms of corners, in terms of their ability to do the vertical jump. He was 35.5 inches. We're talking about a half-inch off there on the vertical jump. I call it a push. That's a push for me in terms of the athletic testing. This guy wasn't the most athletically gifted corner to come out, of the draft. Played at University of Central Florida. But nonetheless, when he touched the football field, he produced. He produced at a very, very high level. And that has to do with pattern recognition, guys. Number one, it's scheme fit. Okay, let's run it back a little bit. It is scheme fit. Scheme fit has a lot to do with it, no doubt, right? If you put him in a predominantly 60% or more snaps man coverage system, I don't think Asante Samuel would have been the same player. But if you put him in a zone system where you might play 30% of your snaps out of man coverage, this is the type of system that a guy like Asante Samuel works in. The other side to this is that even though he wasn't the tallest guy in the world, even though he wasn't the fastest guy in the world, he didn't have the most impressive testing measurements. The one redeemable trait that he had as a corner, playing on the outside with shorter arms and not the greatest height and stature, his ability to read and pattern recognize. Okay, I can't tell you. I don't remember his ability to what they call the mirror and match the movements. I don't know that part, but pattern recognition, I know that that was his calling card, guys. I'd have to go back and watch film to give you the other side of that. I don't know. But this young man had the ability to go out there, recognize scheme, recognize route concepts, and jump the play by reading the quarterback. That's where he made his money. That's where you talk about these long shots. We talk about the roster, right? The Mario Goodriches, right? The guys like Josh Joby. These long shots to make the roster at corner. Kerry Vincent Jr., who's a little bit more athletically gifted, guys. Given. He's way more athletically gifted. No matter how you look at it, they've got to be able to process the information, look at these route combinations, especially in Jonathan Gannon's system, and you got to be able to have ball production. You got to be able to jump these routes. That's what's going to separate them. I gave you guys, to round off this conversation, what I called the unicorn, or the exception to the rule, because I think it's important. So with that said, guys, I gave you the corner. This completes it all. We brought it back home with a guy that was a former Eagle here to talk about, hey, we did all this underlying number, all this underlying data. But has anyone ever broken these rules, Steve? Yes. Asante Samuel broke the rules. He was way better than what anyone would have known coming out of college. Guy was a 4th-round pick for a reason, guys. And boy, when he got on the football field, he produced. He was a good football player. There's a reason why he won a couple of Super Bowls. And yes, I know he has a disappointing moment where, he dropped one against the Giants in the Super Bowl, and that turned into the helmet catch later on. With that said, this was a really good football player for a really long time. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention, guys, and I'll see y'all in the next video.